Chapter 1. Memories Awakened. The towering skyscraper of Sinclair Enterprises gleamed under the morning sun, a fitting representation of Ethan Sinclair's unmatched power and ruthlessness. At 32, he was one of the most feared and admired billionaires in the world, a man whose cold, calculating gaze could crush empires, and whose commanding presence made people tremble. Yet beneath the pristine surface of his perfect life, Ethan battled a torment that no one knew. Every night vivid dreams plagued him. Dreams of a grand palace, blood-soaked battlefields, and a man with fierce, loyal eyes. The dreams always ended the same, with Ethan as the Emperor, clutching the lifeless body of his beloved commander Adrian. "You belong to me," he would whisper in his dreams, even as Adrian's warmth faded from his arms. It wasn't just a dream. Ethan knew it wasn't. That morning, as he walked into his office, Ethan's steely composure cracked the moment he laid eyes on the new hire, his secretary, Adrian Moore. Adrian was stunning, with an aura of quiet strength and a piercing gaze that made Ethan's chest tighten. It was him, his commander, his love, the one he had lost centuries ago. "Good morning, Mr. Sinclair," Adrian greeted, his voice steady and professional. He extended a hand, a polite smile gracing his lips. Ethan ignored the gesture, his mind reeling. It wasn't possible. And yet, here Adrian stood, alive and oblivious to their past. Ethan clenched his fists. "You don't remember me, but I will never forget you." "You're late," Ethan snapped, his voice colder than intended. He needed to compose himself, but the sight of Adrian stirred a storm of emotions, relief, longing, and an overwhelming need to never let him go again. Adrian frowned but nodded. "I'll ensure it doesn't happen again, sir." As the day wore on, Ethan couldn't stop watching Adrian. The way he moved, the way he spoke, it was all so achingly familiar. Adrian, however, was oblivious to his boss's intense stares, too focused on proving himself in his new role. By the time the office cleared out, Ethan was still at his desk staring at an old family heirloom, a jade ring he had worn as an emperor. It was his last tie to their past life. His thumb brushed over the smooth surface as memories of Adrian's unwavering loyalty consumed him. "I won't lose you again," Ethan murmured, his voice heavy with resolve. The sound of the door opening startled him. Adrian stood at the threshold, hesitating. "Mr. Sinclair, I noticed you hadn't left yet. Do you need anything before I go?" Ethan's lips curled into a faint, almost predatory smile. "Yes, Adrian. I need you to stay." Adrian blinked, confused by the intensity in Ethan's voice. "Stay." Ethan rose from his chair and approached him slowly, the jade ring glinting under the office lights. "This time, I'll make sure you never leave me." Adrian's confusion deepened, but before he could respond, Ethan added, his tone soft yet commanding, "Cancel your plans for tonight. You're having dinner with me." The command left no room for argument. Adrian nodded hesitantly, unable to shake the feeling that he had just walked into something far more complex than he could comprehend. As Adrian left to gather his things, Ethan watched him go, his heart pounding with anticipation. This time there would be no fate, no war, and no death to separate them. This time Adrian would stay by his side, forever. Chapter 2. A Contractual Bond. Ethan Sinclair was a man who always got what he wanted, and right now all he wanted was Adrian Moore. As he sat across from Adrian in an exclusive, dimly lit restaurant, Ethan's sharp blue eyes never left the man. Adrian, on the other hand, was fidgeting slightly under the weight of Ethan's intense gaze. "This place is impressive," Adrian commented, trying to break the tension as he glanced at the luxurious decor. Ethan didn't respond right away. Instead, he sipped his wine slowly, studying every inch of Adrian's face. It was unnerving, yet oddly familiar to Adrian, though he couldn't place why. "You're competent," Ethan finally said, setting his glass down. His voice was deep and commanding. "But competence isn't enough. If you want to work for me, you'll need to be extraordinary." Adrian stiffened. "I can assure you, Mr. Sinclair, I always give my best." "I expect more than your best," Ethan interrupted, leaning forward. "I need loyalty, absolute loyalty." The weight of those words hung heavily between them. Adrian felt his pulse quicken, unsure why such a simple statement left him uneasy. "Of course, sir," he replied cautiously. "I understand the demands of this job." Ethan smirked, but there was no humor in it. Only an unsettling possessiveness. "I don't think you do, Adrian." Before Adrian could respond, a waiter arrived, breaking the tension momentarily. Ethan barely acknowledged the man as their meals were placed before them. "You were a soldier once," Ethan said suddenly, catching Adrian off guard. "How did you—" Adrian started, then stopped. He had mentioned his brief military background during his interview, but it was odd that Ethan remembered such a minor detail. "I pay attention," Ethan said smoothly, cutting into his steak. "Discipline, focus, strength. They're good qualities for someone working with me. But what made you leave the military?" Adrian hesitated. "I didn't feel like I belonged there anymore, like I was searching for something else." Ethan's grip on his knife tightened imperceptibly. The word struck a chord deep within him. Searching for something, or someone. "That's good," Ethan said softly. "You've found your place now. With me." The certainty in Ethan's tone sent a shiver down Adrian's spine. He forced a smile, trying to shake the strange unease that had settled over him. The following week, Ethan's obsession became more apparent. He called Adrian into his office frequently, assigning him tasks that seemed oddly personal, organizing his schedule, picking out gifts for clients, and even handling his meals. One morning, Ethan handed Adrian a folder with a contract inside. "What's this?" Adrian asked, flipping through the pages. "A revised employment agreement," Ethan said, leaning back in his chair. His gaze was sharp and unyielding. "I'm offering you a higher salary, a substantial bonus, and a clause ensuring you'll remain with Sinclair Enterprises for the next 5 years." Adrian frowned. 5 years is a long time. "It's a fair offer," Ethan said coolly. "You won't find better terms anywhere else." Adrian hesitated. Something about the contract felt suffocating, yet the financial security was undeniable, and the benefits were generous beyond reason. "I'll need some time to think." "You don't need time," Ethan interrupted, his tone final. "Sign it, Adrian." The command was delivered so smoothly, so assuredly, that Adrian found himself nodding before he even realized it. "Fine," Adrian said reluctantly, taking the pen Ethan handed him. As he signed the document, Ethan's lips curved into a satisfied smile. "Good," Ethan said, standing and walking around his desk. He placed a hand on Adrian's shoulder, his touch firm and lingering. "You've made the right choice." Adrian swallowed hard, unsure whether he had just secured a brighter future or walked willingly into a trap. Late that night, Adrian stood in his modest apartment, staring out the window. The city lights glittered below, but his mind was elsewhere. Why did he feel so drawn to Ethan Sinclair? Why did the man's every word, every look feel like a chain tightening around his heart? Adrian didn't have the answers. But one thing was certain, his life had just changed, and there was no going back. Across the city in his sprawling penthouse, Ethan stared at an old portrait he had commissioned centuries ago. It depicted an emperor standing beside his loyal commander. "You're mine, Adrian," he whispered to the painting. "This time, nothing will take you from me." Chapter 3: Shadows of the Past. Adrian tossed and turned in his bed that night, sleep eluding him. When he finally drifted off, his dreams were not peaceful. He stood on a battlefield, his armor stained with blood. Around him, the cries of war echoed, and the acrid smell of smoke filled the air. In the distance, a grand palace loomed, its golden spires glinting under a crimson sky. "Adrian," a deep, commanding voice called. He turned, his breath hitching, as he faced a man seated on an ornate throne. His regal robes were adorned with intricate patterns, and a jade ring gleamed on his finger. His piercing gaze held Adrian captive. "You swore your life to me," the man said, his tone both accusing and desperate. "Do not betray me." Adrian woke with a start, his heart racing. Sweat clung to his skin as the vivid dream lingered in his mind. Who was the man? Why did his voice feel so familiar, so intimate? At work, Adrian struggled to shake the unease from his dream, but Ethan was relentless. The billionaire's presence was suffocating yet magnetic, his every action calculated to keep Adrian close. "Adrian," Ethan called from his office. Adrian entered, clipboard in hand. "Yes, Mr. Sinclair?" Ethan gestured for him to sit, his eyes never leaving Adrian's face. "You look tired." Adrian blinked, startled by the observation. "Just a rough night, nothing to worry about." Ethan's lips curved into a knowing smirk. "Dreams." Adrian stiffened. "How did you—" Ethan leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. "Dreams can be powerful," Sometimes they're more than just the mind's wanderings. Sometimes they're memories. Adrian's breath caught. He wanted to dismiss the comment as absurd, but something in Ethan's tone made him pause. I don't follow, Adrian said cautiously. Ethan's gaze darkened. You will in time. Before Adrian could respond, Ethan abruptly changed the subject, assigning him another task. But the conversation lingered in Adrian's mind long after he left the office. That night, Adrian found himself in the throes of another dream. He was kneeling before the same man, the Emperor, his head bowed in submission. I live to serve you, Your Majesty, he heard himself say. The Emperor stood, stepping closer until Adrian could feel the heat of his presence. He tilted Adrian's chin up, forcing their eyes to meet. You are mine, Adrian. No one else's. Remember that. The words sent a shiver through him, a mix of fear and longing. The next morning, Adrian confronted Ethan. Mr. Sinclair, can I ask you something? Adrian began, standing stiffly by Ethan's desk. Ethan looked up from his paperwork, his expression unreadable. Go ahead. Have we met before? Adrian asked hesitantly. Ethan's hand froze mid-movement. For a moment he said nothing, and the silence was deafening. Then he set his pen down and stood, closing the distance between them. Why do you ask? Ethan's voice was low, almost predatory. I've been having these dreams, Adrian admitted reluctantly, about someone who looks like you. Someone who… Ethan grasped Adrian's wrist suddenly, his grip firm but not painful. His eyes bore into Adrian's, intense and unyielding. What do you see in these dreams? Ethan demanded, his tone urgent. Adrian hesitated, overwhelmed by the sudden proximity. A battlefield? An emperor. He reminds me of you. Ethan's expression softened for a fleeting moment, a strange mix of relief and longing crossing his face. It's not a coincidence, he said quietly. Those dreams are your memories. You don't remember yet, but you will. Adrian pulled his wrist free, taking a step back. What are you talking about? Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Adrian, I know this sounds insane, but we've known each other before. In another life. Adrian stared at him, disbelief warring with the inexplicable sense that Ethan was telling the truth. You're serious. Deadly serious, Ethan replied. You were my commander, my most loyal companion, and I… He paused, his voice softening. I was the emperor who loved you beyond reason. Adrian's knees felt weak. He gripped the edge of the desk for support. This is crazy. Is it? Ethan challenged, stepping closer. Don't you feel it, the pull between us? The way your heart races when I'm near? Adrian's mouth opened, but no words came out. I've waited centuries for you, Ethan continued, his voice raw with emotion. And now that I've found you again, I won't let you go. Adrian felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. The dreams, the strange connection he felt to Ethan, it all started to make a twisted kind of sense. But one question lingered in his mind. What happened to us? Adrian whispered. Ethan's expression darkened, pain flashing in his eyes. I lost you, he said hoarsely, but I won't lose you again. As the weight of Ethan's words sank in, Adrian realized his life had just become far more complicated than he could have ever imagined. Chapter 4. Confessions and Revelations. Adrian spent the following days in a daze, his mind racing. The conversation with Ethan had left him shaken, but more than that, it had opened a door he wasn't sure he wanted to walk through. Was it possible that everything Ethan had said was true? Could their past lives really be the key to the strange, undeniable bond between them? Every time he saw Ethan, something deep within him stirred, a mix of recognition and something far more intense, as if he had always belonged by the billionaire's side. But at the same time, the man in front of him wasn't just the emperor from his dreams. Ethan Sinclair was cold, calculating, and ruthless. And yet when their eyes met, Adrian saw the same raw desperation, the same longing that had been present in those dreams. There was no denying it. Ethan had been obsessed with him before, and now, in this new life, it seemed the obsession hadn't faded. If anything, it had intensified. Late one evening, after the workday had ended, Adrian found himself once again standing before Ethan's office door. He had come to terms with the fact that the dreams weren't just dreams, they were memories. But they were also fragmented, like pieces of a puzzle he couldn't quite put together. Adrian knocked once, and at Ethan's low "Enter," he stepped inside. Ethan was leaning over a set of papers, his back to Adrian. You're late, he said without looking up, his voice carrying a strange note of irritation. Adrian paused, the words sticking in his throat. He had come to ask Ethan about the past, to understand everything, but he couldn't seem to find the courage. Instead, he simply stood there, caught in a web of confusion and strange yearning. Ethan finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "What is it, Adrian?" His tone softened, but there was something underlying it, something darker. Adrian hesitated before stepping forward. "You said we've known each other before, in another life, and you said you were an emperor." Ethan's jaw clenched, and for a moment his eyes flashed with a mixture of pain and hunger. "I was." Adrian swallowed, trying to steady his nerves. "And I was your commander, your lover." Ethan stood slowly, walking around his desk toward Adrian. The air between them thickened, the pull between them undeniable. "You were everything to me, Adrian," Ethan said softly, his voice tinged with emotion. "In that life, I was an emperor. And you were the only one who ever mattered. The only one who was loyal, who never betrayed me, even in the face of death. You stayed by my side." Adrian's chest tightened, a wave of emotion crashing over him. "And what happened? Why are we here now? Why do I not remember all of this?" Ethan's eyes darkened, his expression pained. "We were separated, betrayed by those we trusted. I was forced to watch as you died in my arms, Adrian." His voice broke and he paused, as if gathering himself. "You were taken from me, but I vowed that no matter the cost, I would find you again. And now here you are, but you don't remember. You don't remember us." Adrian's mind was spinning. He had never seen Ethan like this. Vulnerable, raw, haunted. For the first time, Adrian could feel the weight of the man's obsession, the depth of his love. It wasn't just possessiveness. It was desperation. Ethan wasn't just seeking to control him. He was terrified of losing him again. "Ethan," Adrian whispered, his voice trembling, "I don't know if I can believe this. It sounds insane." Ethan stepped closer, his hand reaching out to gently cup Adrian's face. "It's true, Adrian. I've waited centuries for this. For you. And now that I've found you again, I won't let anything tear us apart." Adrian's breath caught as he stared into Ethan's eyes that burned with a fierce, unrelenting need. "I won't let you go," Ethan said, his voice low and filled with a promise. Before Adrian could speak, Ethan's lips crashed onto his, the kiss desperate and full of longing. Adrian froze, his mind whirling as every inch of his body screamed that this was what he had been searching for. The kiss was hot and consuming, as though Ethan was trying to reclaim something lost. And Adrian couldn't deny that it felt right. The kiss deepened, and Adrian's resistance faltered. The touch of Ethan's hands on his skin, the heat radiating between them. It was too much. For a brief moment, Adrian allowed himself to feel everything he had suppressed, everything he had tried to ignore. When they finally pulled apart, Adrian's heart was racing, his thoughts a jumbled mess. "What are we doing, Ethan?" he asked, breathless. Ethan's hand rested against Adrian's cheek, his thumb brushing gently over his skin. "We're finding each other again. This time there will be no betrayals, no death. Just you and me, Adrian. Forever." Adrian closed his eyes, the weight of Ethan's words settling deep within him. He knew the road ahead would be dangerous. Ethan's obsession was not something easily controlled, but in that moment he couldn't bring himself to pull away. The connection between them was too strong, too overwhelming. "I don't know if I can live up to everything you think I am," Adrian admitted quietly. "You don't have to," Ethan whispered, his forehead resting against Adrian's. "You just have to be mine." The words sent a shiver through Adrian's spine, and despite the uncertainty, despite the fear that clung to him, he found himself unable to resist. Maybe this was their destiny. Maybe this was what they were always meant to be. But deep down, Adrian knew one thing. Nothing in this life or the next would ever be simple. Chapter 5. Bound by Fate. The next few days passed in a haze for Adrian. His mind was a swirling mix of confusion, disbelief, and something deeper, something he couldn't quite name. He had kissed Ethan. He had let himself be consumed by the man's intensity, and for the first time in a long while he felt like he belonged. But the weight of what they were doing, of what Ethan had said, was not so easily ignored. He had been with Ethan before. He had loved him, and yet even now in this life, Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that everything was moving too fast. His rational mind screamed for him to pull away, to run, but his heart ached with a longing he couldn't deny. It was a week later when the first crack appeared in their fragile balance. Ethan had become even more possessive, and Adrian found himself constantly at his side. At first he didn't mind. He told himself it was just a phase, that they were simply rediscovering each other, but as the days wore on, the pressure became suffocating. Everywhere he went, Ethan was there. Every phone call, every meeting, Ethan was present, always watching, always controlling. Adrian's every movement seemed to be scrutinized, his every word dissected. One evening, as Adrian sat at his desk in the office, Ethan stood by the window, his back to him. The silence was thick, oppressive. "I think we need to talk," Adrian said, his voice steady but filled with an edge of frustration. Ethan turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "About what?" "This. Us. This. Whatever it is that's happening." Adrian stood up, running a hand through his hair. "I need space, Ethan." The words hung in the air, heavy and charged. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't move closer. "You don't get space, Adrian. You're mine. I'm not letting you slip away again." Adrian stepped back, a wave of panic rising in his chest. "You're suffocating me. I need time to think, to understand this." Ethan's eyes darkened, his voice low. "You think you need time? You think I haven't given you all the time I could? I've waited centuries for this. You can't just walk away from me now." Adrian's heart pounded, a mix of fear and confusion gripping him. "I'm not walking away, Ethan. I'm not. But I can't just give myself to you without understanding what this means. I can't keep living in the shadow of our past life." Ethan's hand curled into a fist at his side. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with unspoken emotions. "What if our past life is the only thing that matters?" he asked quietly, his voice raw. "What if this, we, have always been meant to be? Don't you feel it, Adrian? Don't you see it? We're fated." Adrian stared at him, his mind racing. Was this fate, or was it obsession? He wanted to pull away, to take a step back and regain his control, but every time he tried, something pulled him back to Ethan. Something deeper than reason or logic. "I don't know what I feel anymore," Adrian admitted, his voice shaking slightly. Ethan's eyes softened, but the hunger in them didn't fade. He took a step forward, closing the distance between them. You'll remember everything, Adrian. And when you do, you'll understand that we're not just two people. We're part of something bigger, something eternal." Adrian closed his eyes, his body trembling with conflicting emotions. He wanted to fight. He wanted to resist. But he couldn't deny that every time Ethan was near, every time their gazes locked, he felt the pull of destiny, of something unbreakable. "I can't do this," Adrian whispered, his voice barely audible. But even as the words left his lips, he knew they weren't true. Ethan reached for him, his hands gentle yet insistent. "You're not doing anything, Adrian. You're just letting it happen." The following days were a blur of emotions. Adrian found himself torn between wanting to resist and wanting to surrender. Ethan's presence was overwhelming, and every time he saw the billionaire, his heart would race. But the more he gave in to Ethan's dominance, the more he felt himself slipping away. It was as if he were being consumed by Ethan's obsession, by the weight of their past life. But despite everything, Adrian couldn't pull away. There was something about Ethan, something undeniable, that kept him rooted. Maybe it was the history they shared, the connection that had never truly disappeared. Maybe it was the love that Ethan had for him, fierce and unyielding, a love that transcended time and space. On the fifth night after their confrontation, Adrian couldn't sleep. He stood at the window of his apartment, staring out at the city below. He had made a decision, though he wasn't sure if it was the right one. He had to confront Ethan, to lay everything out on the table. But just as he was about to leave, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. "I'm coming for you tonight, Adrian. Don't try to run. You belong to me. Always have, always will." Adrian's heart skipped a beat. The intensity of the message was almost too much to bear. But despite the fear, despite the chaos, Adrian knew one thing for certain. There was no escaping Ethan. Not this time. He was bound to him, by fate, by love, by something that couldn't be undone. And so Adrian waited, knowing that whatever came next would change everything. Chapter 6: A Reckoning of the Heart. The night was still, the city lights below twinkling like distant stars, but inside Adrian's apartment, there was nothing but a suffocating silence. His phone buzzed again, but he didn't need to look at it to know who it was. Ethan's presence, even in absence, seemed to hang in the air, heavy and inevitable. Adrian couldn't breathe. He felt trapped in a cycle of obsession, love and fear that he wasn't sure how to escape from. Ethan had warned him, "Don't try to run," and despite every instinct screaming at him to resist, Adrian knew deep down that there was no escaping what they were. What they had been, what they would always be. He couldn't run from the past. It was too powerful, too deeply embedded in his soul. The sound of the doorbell broke him from his thoughts, a sharp jolt of realization coursing through him. Ethan was here. Adrian's hands trembled as he reached for the doorknob. His heart pounded in his chest, anticipation mingled with dread. He had decided he would confront Ethan. He had to make a stand, even if it meant he would lose himself in the process. He opened the door and there stood Ethan, framed by the dim light of the hallway. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes burned with an intensity that threatened to consume Adrian whole. The air between them felt thick, charged with emotions they both tried to suppress. "Adrian," Ethan said softly, stepping into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. "You're not going to fight me anymore, are you?" Adrian swallowed hard, his throat dry. "I don't know what to do anymore, Ethan. It's too much. I can't breathe when you're around me all the time. I can't think straight." His voice shook, but he forced himself to continue. "I can't keep living like this. I don't know if I can be what you want me to be." Ethan's gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of vulnerability showing through the cold mask he always wore. But then, just as quickly, his expression hardened. "I've waited too long, Adrian. You think you can just walk away from this? From us? You think you can run from fate?" "I'm not trying to run," Adrian said, his voice stronger now. "I'm trying to understand. Trying to find myself again. I don't remember everything from our past life. I don't even know if I want to. What if I don't want to be with you?" Ethan's breath hitched, and for a brief second the wall around his heart cracked. But he quickly masked it, taking a step forward. "You're not listening, Adrian. You were with me. You always have been. And you always will be. No one else has ever come close to what we had, what we are." Adrian flinched, the weight of Ethan's words pressing down on him. "But you can't force me to love you again. You can't force me to remember everything all at once. I need time. I need space." His voice cracked. "I need to breathe." Ethan paused, his expression faltering for a moment, before he closed the distance between them. He cupped Adrian's face gently, his thumb brushing over Adrian's lower lip, a tenderness in his touch that felt at odds with his usual cold, controlling demeanor. "I'm not forcing you to love me," Ethan said, his voice low, sincere. "I've already given you everything, Adrian. All I want is for you to see that we belong together. That we always have, and I'll do anything to make you realize that." Adrian trembled beneath Ethan's touch, torn between the undeniable pull he felt toward the man and the need to escape, to reclaim his life. "I don't know what to believe anymore. You say we're destined to be together, but I don't remember. I'm not the same person I was back then." Ethan's hand slid down to Adrian's neck, his thumb tracing the outline of his jaw. "You're still you. You're always going to be you, Adrian. No matter what life we're in. No matter how many times we're reborn, it's always been you." Adrian's heart raced as he stared into Ethan's eyes. There was no denying the depth of Ethan's feelings. The love, the obsession, it was real. But Adrian was no longer the man he had been in the past. He had a life to build, a future to shape, and no matter how strongly Ethan felt, Adrian couldn't allow himself to be swallowed whole by this darkness. "I need a choice, Ethan," Adrian said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I can't just be pulled into this fate you're telling me about. I need to choose you. I need to want you, not because it's fate, but because I love you. But I can't do that if you won't let me breathe." Ethan's face softened for a fleeting moment, his grip loosening slightly, as if processing Adrian's words. Then his expression hardened again, and Adrian could see the struggle beneath his calm exterior. "You do love me," Ethan whispered, almost to himself. "And when you remember everything, you'll see that nothing has changed." Adrian's breath caught as he met Ethan's gaze, something shifting within him. The pull, the undeniable aching pull, was still there, wrapped around his heart, tightening with every passing second. But Adrian knew that he had to take control of his own life. He couldn't be swallowed whole by the man in front of him, no matter how much Ethan tried to convince him otherwise. "I'll give you something, Ethan," Adrian said, his voice firm. "I'll give you the chance to prove to me that we can be more than just two souls bound by destiny. Show me that you're not just the emperor I loved, but the man I can love again in this life. But you have to let me make the choice. I need to find myself first." Ethan stood still, his expression unreadable. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally he spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "I'll wait for you, Adrian. Always. But don't make me wait too long. Because I will never let you go again." Adrian nodded, a heavy weight in his chest. The battle wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time he felt like he was taking control. He would not let Ethan's obsession nor the weight of their past life consume him. He would find a way to make his own choice. And this time, it would be his decision, his future, his love. Chapter 7: A New Beginning. The days that followed the confrontation between Adrian and Ethan were both difficult and liberating. Adrian had made his decision. He wasn't going to let the weight of their past life dictate his every move. He couldn't ignore the powerful connection they shared, but he also needed to find himself, to understand his own heart, before he could fully embrace whatever future they might have together. Ethan, though still intense and possessive, seemed to respect Adrian's need for space. He didn't press him for answers or demand anything. Instead, he waited. His presence was ever constant, but he gave Adrian the time he needed to think, to reflect. One evening, Adrian found himself walking through the streets of the city, his mind clear for the first time in days. The night air was cool against his skin, and the hum of the city around him felt oddly comforting. He had spent days trying to separate himself from the chaos inside him, and now, finally, he was ready to confront the truth. Adrian had come to realize something during the days of reflection. It wasn't just the memories of their past life that tied him to Ethan. It was the undeniable fact that Ethan had always been there. Beneath the layers of obsession, beneath the control and the pain, there was love. A love that, despite everything, had never wavered. And as much as it terrified Adrian, it was a love that he couldn't escape. But now, for the first time, Adrian had a choice. He had his voice in this life. He could choose to love Ethan, not because fate demanded it, but because his heart knew that no matter how complicated, no matter how painful, Ethan was the one who completed him. When Adrian arrived at the penthouse, Ethan was there, waiting for him. He didn't speak when Adrian entered, only looked at him, with those dark, intense eyes, waiting for something. Adrian could feel the anticipation hanging in the air between them, thick and electric. For a moment, neither of them moved, just standing there, their gazes locked. And then, slowly, Adrian walked forward, the weight of everything he had been carrying finally lifting. "I've thought about what you said," Adrian began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "About us. About how we've always been connected, even across lifetimes." Ethan's eyes searched his face. His lips parted as if to say something, but Adrian held up a hand, signaling for him to wait. "You were right," Adrian continued. "We are connected. And no matter how much I tried to deny it, I can't escape the pull. The love that you have for me, it's real, and I feel it too, Ethan. I've always felt it, even if I didn't know why. But I needed to find my own way back to you. Not because it was fate, but because I want to choose you." Ethan's breath caught, his hands clenching at his sides as if trying to contain his emotions. Adrian saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the raw truth of what Ethan had been feeling all this time. "Adrian," Ethan whispered, stepping forward. His hand reached out to touch Adrian's cheek, his touch soft but desperate, as if he were afraid Adrian might slip away. Adrian closed his eyes at the touch, leaning into Ethan's palm. "I choose you, Ethan. I choose to love you again, but I need you to promise me something." Ethan's gaze never wavered, and he nodded without hesitation. "Anything. I need you to promise me that you'll never try to control me again, that you'll let me be myself, even as we are together. I need space to grow, but I want you by my side. Can you do that?" Ethan's expression softened, and for a moment Adrian saw the man beneath the emperor, the man who loved him with all his heart. I promise, he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. I'll never cage you, Adrian. You're free. Always have been. I just wanted you to know how much I need you. How much I love you. Adrian stepped closer, his heart racing in his chest. Then let's do this together. Let's create our own future. Ethan's lips curled into a small smile, a rare, genuine one, and he gently pulled Adrian into his arms. The warmth of Ethan's embrace filled Adrian's chest with a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. No longer was there a weight of fear or uncertainty. For the first time in a long time, Adrian felt whole. I love you, Adrian, Ethan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Adrian tilted his head back to look at him, his eyes soft but filled with determination. And I love you, Ethan. I always have. As their lips met in a kiss, it was as if the final piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. This time it wasn't driven by obsession. It was driven by a choice to love, to trust, and to build a future together. Adrian didn't know what lay ahead, but with Ethan by his side, he knew he was ready to face whatever came their way. The months that followed were filled with quiet moments of discovery. Adrian and Ethan built a relationship that was grounded in mutual respect, trust, and love. They learned to navigate the complexities of their past life and their present one, forging a bond stronger than either of them had ever known. Ethan no longer needed to control or possess Adrian. Their connection, deep and undeniable, was enough. And Adrian in turn grew into the man he had always been meant to be, a partner, not a possession. And though the world outside remained ever-changing, in that small apartment, in that quiet moment, they both knew this was the beginning of something beautiful. Something that could not be broken by the past, by time, or by anything else. They had found their way back to each other, and this time nothing could tear them apart. Together they were unstoppable. Together they were home.